He's upset. Remember, he was here for a long time. You saw a man who was very happy when he stood behind the Oval Desk. And even with the black eye, I said, "Do you want a little makeup? We'll get you a little makeup." But he said, "No, I don't think so," which is interesting and very nice. He wants to be who he is. So you could make that statement too, I guess. Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore. I was surprised because you were here. Everybody in this room practically was here as we had a wonderful send-off. He said wonderful things about me. You couldn't have nicer. Said the best thing. He's worn the hat. Trump was right about everything. And I am right about the great, big, beautiful bill.
Hey, all.
Go ahead.
No. I'm just going to bring us into it. Hey, all. Sean and Jules here. Welcome back to Wet Wired. There have been a lot of things going on in the past week, and it's been really hard to choose what we wanted to talk about, so we're just going to talk about everything. Except for the thing that you're thinking we should be talking about, and we totally forgot about whatever that is.
No, we're deliberately ignoring it.
Yes, that's right. We've been silent on that issue.
What aren't they talking about?
Of all those things, Trump and the U.S. Army had their joint birthday party. Cops are still attacking protesters in L.A. Israel attacked Iran, reminding the entire planet that Israel attacking its neighbors is absolutely not them starting a brand new war, but is actually them defending themselves from an enemy who might possibly, maybe, but probably won't attack them at some future time.
I don't know. Does Israel have some fucking Bene Gesserit telling them what's going to happen in the future?
I know, right? They have like the 1,000-year plan that they know that the Kwisatz Haderach is going to arise in Tehran. And big news from over the weekend that a man who was clearly politically and religiously motivated killed a state lawmaker in Minnesota along with her husband, and then attempted to kill another one and his wife, succeeding in only critically injuring them. And after being on the run for a few days, he was caught on Sunday. Is that right? June 15th?
Yeah, he was caught yesterday. Or I'm sorry, no, Monday.
Was it Monday? No, it wasn't yesterday. He was caught on over the weekend.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds right.
But before we get into any of those things, I have to go back a couple of weeks because what feels like 5 years ago was only a week and a half. That is to talk about the Trump and Musk slap fight on social media.
It was more of a pillow fight.
Right, exactly, yes.
In their pajamas.
I don't really want to go I don't want to go over rehash all the details or anything like that because most people have probably come across that. I mean, what we know is that it went pretty much like Musk, after months of annoying the living shit out of everybody in the White House, finally retired his Doge father hat and returned to civilian life. This is after tanking the valuation of Tesla stock and I think reducing his own net worth by something like $80 billion or something, along those lines.
A huge chunk. It's maybe a quarter or a third of his wealth vanished overnight.
And the original promise, too, the whole project was a total failure because the original promise is that he was going to save $2 trillion. And I think they barely broke $65 billion. But he did not go quietly. Instead, on X, the everything app, he started bashing Trump's big, beautiful bill right after receiving the key to the White House, which is a totally made up thing, of course. And then essentially called Trump a pedophile, saying that because he was in the Epstein files, that's the reason that Kash Patel hadn't released them. Trump shot back, accusing Musk of being pissed at of just being mad that all of his EV credits were going away. And in case anybody doesn't know, selling EV credits to other car manufacturers is the only way Tesla has ever been profitable.
Everything that they make is a technological wonder. It's a wonder that it exists. It's a wonder that it works when it works. And it's a wonder that the bumper doesn't fall off.
All of that aside, I mean, that's just backstory. But by flaming out in front of everybody and attacking Trump online, Musk put MAGA world in this impossible position where they had to figure out whose side he was going to be on when the dads are fighting. People like had a real problem trying to figure out like where they landed on this. He immediately created this paradox for every one of these sycophantic followers because they all of a sudden couldn't like them both. I think the best part of all of this was just how people wrapped their heads around this and bit themselves into these tight spaces so that they could manage to square that circle.
Who gets the country on weekends?
Yes. One of the most prominent MAGA influencers who has, somehow become like a QAnon guy who somehow went legit is Jack Posobiec, Pizzagate truther, Charlie Kirk pal. Now he does a show on Turning Point. He wrote, "Some of y'all can't handle two high agency males going at it, and it really shows. This is direct communication, phallocentric, versus indirect communication, gynocentric. I understand you aren't used to it."
So who's the gynocentric?
It's because both of them are using phallocentric communication.
They're talking with their dicks?
Yes.
So you'd say that they're not talking heads, they're dickheads.
They're not talking with their dicks, but what they're saying is dick-centric. He got no end of dragging about what two high agency males going at it might look like. But
I have a playlist for them.
Is this your Pornhub highlights? Your favorites? Can you share a playlist like you can on Spotify?
Absolutely, you can. You can have friends on Pornhub.
I love it. It's a community.
I have 2 friends.
They're building a community. Posobiec's tweet just shows how the perfect example of how completely genitalia focused so many people on the right are. They're just obsessed with genitals. It's like those people that do like the transvestigators who are talking about like who used to be a woman or who used to be a man, and based on their body posture. And like, have you seen that? Jules, come on. You're looking at me like I'm insane right now. You have not seen these graphics.
No, I mean, this is new fucking phrenology. What are you talking about?
Oh my God, Jules.
How am I not clued into this?
Jules. I don't know.
You're showing me.
I guess we have to do a review of the transvestigators up to date because they haven't stopped. They peaked about 2 years ago, but they haven't quit. There's still people that are dedicated to
You're putting me on a carpet ride right now. A whole new world of transvestigators?
Transvestigators.
God damn it. What a stupid name.
All right. There's another very strong take that I came across, and this one was from Culture Warrior and self-described political strategist. Like he calls himself that in his Twitter bio, Joey Manarino. And yes, he does write Joey. I think this guy, after seeing this tweet and then looking at some of his past tweets, I've decided that he is one of my new favorite MAGA influencers.
Favorite for comedy, or like what's your metric here? What are your stats? Oh,
he is ridiculous. I love this guy. He says the craziest fucking things.
Are you going to put him in your fantasy football of MAGA influencers?
He wrote, "Trump and Elon aren't attacking one another in a way that won't be fixed. People forget how men with testicles spar. You're watching two people with balls the size of the moon debate an issue. This is what masculinity looks like."
Is it?
Again, the genitalia.
And they also project this obsession with genitalia onto their own deities. I mean, of course, religiosity is about reading into a text whatever you want to read into it based on your own prejudices and cultural norms. What they read into it is an obsession that God has with what you're doing with your holes. So, of course, likewise, they're going to project that onto their gods.
Most people probably have not heard of Joey Manorino. And if they have, it was because he pissed off enough people that back when United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was killed, somebody tweeted and it went viral claiming that Manorino was the real killer. And they did it. They tweeted out a side-by-side photo of that surveillance camera footage of Luigi Mangione when he had the hood on and he was smiling and everybody's like, how hot is this guy? And then they tweeted out, and then right next to it was the old profile pic for Joey Manorino. And, the man does have a nice smile. And I could see this, which is why it caught on. So he actually started receiving death threats because of this, which I don't think that couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
If you look at it side by side, the two images that we're talking about, it does kind of have a striking resemblance, but when you see the straight on, not nearly as good looking, which demonstrates that whole Instagram thing where if you're getting an image from above, it might not be as good straight on, and that's a tactic that's being used.
Is that your tip of the day for how to look at profile pictures on Hinge?
No, that's just a commonly known thing that if like somebody's taking a photograph where they're looking up at their camera, the straight on usually looks a lot shittier.
All right. So, hot tip for everybody with your grinder pics. I think the fallout from the Trump Musk thing, though, that I think it asks a really interesting question about who the fuck is going to buy a Tesla now? Who's the customer base? Because, Musk did walk back this stuff, but I don't know how you can walk back calling somebody a pedophile. I'm not sure, but somehow he's like, he tweeted out that I said some things while I was doing a lot of ketamine and I really regret it, to that effect. But in the years before Musk was widely known, Tesla PR could shape their messaging around environmentally sound and green policies and somehow wedge electric vehicles and electrification in general into that. And while electric vehicles bring their own baggage because of all the rare earth metals that are required for lithium batteries and the electronics and all the mining and how nasty all that stuff is environmentally, and the fact that petroleum is still used in the production of a vehicle like a Tesla because it's got plastic, it's got tires, you still need petroleum.
It's the same thing with the fucking Prius. When the Prius came out, everybody was so gung-ho about the environment as part of the branding, which, fine, great that we're enthused about the environment, but the reality is that it actually produced more fossil fuel emissions ultimately in the production of said vehicle than if you would have just bought a fuel-efficient older vehicle.
Well, because the mining equipment uses petroleum. Everything along the line is going to be using petroleum. And the thing about the electrification idea, though, is that Tesla was always directly against mass transportation, because that would eat into the market they were trying to build. And electrification of mass transit vehicles, that's a great idea. Like electrification of trains, fantastic. Streetcars, fantastic. Electric buses, fantastic. These are all wonderful ideas. Filling the roads, clogging them up with even by promoting more single occupant vehicles, not so great.
I forget who wrote it, but there's some book called something like "Who Killed the Streetcar" or something like that.
Electric car. It's not a book; it's a documentary.
Is it? Son of a bitch. Well, I've read also several.
Don't go to Jules for facts.
But I've also read several books kind of illustrating the similar point. That's why I'm conflating the two. But one of the things that's illustrated is in both of the above is that rubber, oil, and other industries went out of their way in the early quarter of the 20th century to absolutely kill alternative transportation to the motor car.
Some of the original automobiles were electric. There were just as many when the first cars were being made. There were just as many not really gasoline, but kerosene sometimes, but basically fossil fuel powered vehicles as there were electric powered vehicles, like 1910. Then like the fossil fuel powered vehicles won out for reasons. And then by the time you get to the 80s, there was an attempt to make a mass produced electric car. And that's the one that the documentary is about, is like basically what happened to this thing. Like it seemed like it was going well, and then it was just gone. The car manufacturers stand behind the claim that it just was not popular with people. And that could be the case. They kind of made it ugly. It looked like a plastic Citron. But, people like environmentalists like Ed Begley Jr., who was the host of that documentary or narrated it, was convinced that there is much more of a conspiratorial angle from the petroleum industry.
Well, I mean, in the early, I want to say 30s and 40s, so much of the light rail was bought up just to be dismantled and destroyed and paved over by oil companies.
Because they wanted roads for cars. Yeah, they wanted cars. Exactly. They were buying up streetcar tracks and streetcar companies and then tearing out tracks.
Discover, because apparently everybody had fucking forgotten that there were light rail tracks underneath Albuquerque streets when they were working on, was it Central or something else where they rediscovered that?
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think that happened. Yeah. But remember these bumper stickers that people were putting on their Teslas that I bought this car before Musk was a Nazi?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was always like that. He just wasn't out in front and being crazy in front of everybody. And he hadn't gotten like fully into his ketamine psychosis. But at the same time, MAGA people started buying Cybertrucks after everybody knew he was a Nazi. But now who's left? Who's going to be the remaining customer base? Because liberals aren't going to buy those cars anymore because Musk has been revealed. And the people who have associated with MAGA are like, those sales are going to go away because he's not Trump's buddy anymore. So
he alienated the initial liberal base that were buying the Teslas as a fancier Prius, who were already the driving force there. And then he fucking just now alienates his base who was MAGA. Who do you got?
So thanks, Jules, for just catching up to all the things I said.
I'm putting a bow on it. I'm frosting this cake.
I will deliver one of my few predictions on this show that within 2 years, Musk gets replaced as CEO of Tesla.
Ooh, prediction time. Okay. I'm going to bet 1.5 years.
There you go. That's within 2 years. So I would still win.
Oh, no. I'm going to bet 1.95 years.
I'm going to bet 2 years and 1 month.
Yeah. That way I can do Price's Right shit.
All right. The next thing up is, Jules, did you see the Army parade on Saturday?
What fucking parade? The squeaky wheels on the tanks to total silence from the non-existent crowd.
Oh my God. I was watching a live stream on Associated Press, and it was one of the most depressing things I'd ever seen. There was they had one of the cameras. It might not have been of the Associated Press one, but I was going through a couple of different live streams, and one of them was at the entrance, which has gotten a lot of attention for being a bottleneck, and that kept people from actually getting in, waiting in line for hours and hours because there were only two ways to get into the parade. But right at the entrance, a guy was standing next to it with a sign that read, "You can either be an American or a Trump defender, not both." But in spite of the lines that were really long inside the parade grounds, it looked so dead. It was so dead. It was crazy how dead it was. There's like every camera shot that showed the bleachers that were on the sides. There were so many empty seats. It just so depressing.
It looked like one of those school organized picnics that you have to go to because your kid is in some primary school of some kind.
Little league games have better attendance than this parade did. It was so bad. Those empty stands were just depressing. And then like you said, Jules, like there were like these shots where it's just like, where it was just like a single tank squeaking down the road.
That was literally what was happening.
And then, 50, 60 feet behind it was a couple of guys marching with a flag and in uniform. I mean, it was so bad. All of this, there was supposed to be this sort of tour through the history of Army military uniforms. And I actually, nobody showed any coverage of that. I didn't get to see any of that. Those guys were actually not soldiers, though. Those were just people. They were just actors.
Yeah, they brought in actors.
They brought in actors to do the historic period
cosplay, and the actual military personnel who were part of the armed services. There was at least one of the segments of marching people that went viral for being totally disjointed and out of step. And the allegation from the internet is that it was a malicious compliance because they know how to fucking march in step. And it looked like this fucking chaos.
There were so many like nerd army debates about this. A bunch of people just arguing with each other. Like one guy just, like prolifically writing tweet after tweet in reply to one person who criticized the marching, talking about how when, he just got out in 2017 and they used to march everywhere. And if he had to today, he'd be able to march in perfect sync with everybody. And then other people replying like, what unit were you in? Because we only did this much marching. And then somebody else is like, are you an Air Force fag? And then, it just went back and forth like this. Absolute like army nerd shit. But yes, I did see that marching and I saw how one person was stepping forward with the left and the guy right next to him was stepping forward with the right. And I'm like, what is even going on? They're totally they're totally reversed from one another. And nobody was, and then they were like, oh, well, nobody was calling out cadence. And I'm like, what? Are you serious? Like you can't do left, right without cadence. Like, so you can't remember the fucking tempo. Like,
and there's this other thing that's been spreading around, which I actually just saw a TikTok from, Daniela Mestenik Young, who we've had on the show, where, she said, no, that's not a thing. Calm your tits, everybody.
What's not a thing?
So I'm going to tell you. So apparently everybody, or not everybody, a lot of people on the internet are talking about them serving the soldiers lobster and steak, surf and turf. And supposedly, according to this idea, that is served when something shitty is about to happen, like you're going to get redeployed or you're going to get on a terrible assignment or something like that. They serve you surf and turf. And then she says, that's Friday. That's the Friday at the mess hall. I don't know, but this is just one of the many things where people are fucking nerding out.
Yeah. The video clip on Fox showed tanks rolling down the street. Here was the other the part of it is all of the fucking classic rock. So the Fox clip showed tanks rolling down the street to Van Halen's Jump blaring in the background. Other music that they included was Enter Sandman by Metallica, Barracuda by Heart, Thunderstruck by AC/DC, and Led Zeppelin's Good Times, Bad Times. They estimated that was going to be like 100,000 to 200,000 in attendance, and it turned out
250,000.
And it turned out to be more like 50. For reference, like the King's Day protest, the No King's Day protest in Chicago had more than 20,000 people who showed up. And you know what? They managed to do that without a fucking metal detector, and nobody got shot.
Throughout the United States, there were tens of millions of people for the No King's Day parades. And importantly, it was like one of the largest single day protests in the United States.
I've definitely spent some time maybe not so much on this show, but in conversations, shitting on the idea of these mass organized protests. Like Jules and I talked about this recently, and my attitude then, and it still largely is that these organized protests have an effect of basically venting off these liberals who feel bad when they see things like ICE raids on television, or when they see things on the news that make them feel bad. They show up to protests like this where there is nothing really on the line. There's nothing at stake here. And they go out, they kind of rub elbows with people, and then they go home feeling a sense of accomplishment that like they stood up for something. Meanwhile, they really were just another faceless person in a crowd. The other side of that is that where I'm not so critical of it is when you do have that mass outpouring of support for around a particular cause. The hands-off protest that was organized by the same people is a bit different, because that's like, whatever your pet cause is, show up for that thing, and we're just going to roll it all in. But this was much more focused on a particular issue, and largely around the ICE raids. Yeah, even though it wasn't called abolish ICE protest day, they can't get people to show up for that because that's scary. But they can get people to show up for Trump's acting like a dictator. And that does have an effect on the news when you see that as like, wow, there's something happening here. Maybe I should get behind this too. So I do see some positive aspects of it.
I've said this 1,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000 times more. The two tactical functions of a peaceful protest are networking and publicity. Those are the two functions. If it doesn't get publicity, it doesn't work. Or if it doesn't get publicity, then you can do networking, and that's fine. But if you don't do networking there and get people to go to your meetings for community organizing, to get a renters union or whatever the fuck you're doing in your community.
A fucking bowling league.
A fucking bowling
Start
league.
a softball team.
But if it doesn't serve either of those two functions, if you don't successfully get a whole shitload of people networking around the same cause as a direct result of that activity, or you don't get some really fucking serious press as a direct result of that activity, then it doesn't work. Now, riots are a whole other story, but I'm only specifically talking about peaceful protests here.
So around the same time that the fireworks at the Army parade were going off, police were shooting tear gas and flashbangs at peaceful protesters in downtown LA. And, the whole, their whole justification for using those crowd dispersal weapons is that they said that the protesters were throwing rocks and concrete. And then this term keeps popping up, that they were using commercial grade fireworks. This is a word that I have never heard before in my life.
What the fuck are they talking about?
I have never heard of commercial grade fireworks. And if you think about it for half a second, it's like, okay, I kind of understand. They're talking about pyrotechnics. They're talking about the kind of fireworks that you might see at a concert, or the kind of fireworks that you might see at the end of a game, or, some sporting event or something like that. But when you actually see the few instances of footage of any of these commercial grade fireworks, it's total bullshit, because every time you see firework footage from the protests in LA, they look like Roman candles.
Oh, come on, man. You got no ladyfingers, fuzz butlos, snicker bombs, church burners, finger blasters, gut busters,
I love
zippity doodahs, or crack flappers.
Finger blasters. just pause there for the finger blasters. We used to shoot Roman candles at each other when I was a kid on 4th of July. They were run around firing Roman candles at each other. It's.
That's why your generation has 9 fingers often.
Yeah, we also had lawn darts, so
and a missing appendix.
I think that this insane violent response demands this question because of what is this is the second question that's been demanded today. I want to make a note of that. That of what the hell is the end game for Trump and Stephen Miller when it comes to these ICE crackdowns, which, by the way, Trump is now rolling back. He's decided they're not going to go to Home Depots and farms anymore.
No, they're going to keep up the crackdowns, but they're laying off certain manual labor that affects some of their supporters.
They're not going to farms. They're not going to Home Depots. They're not going to places like that anymore because businesses complained. People from the industry complained to Trump that they can't function.
Yeah.
They decided that they're going to be focusing their ICE raid efforts on sanctuary cities now.
Yeah.
But what is the end result here? Like, what are they looking for? I mean, the number that they use to really rally the racist MAGA base, and I don't mean all MAGA is racist. What I mean is like the racists that are MAGA, and there's a lot of them.
And there's even a distinction between like the overtly racist,
absolutely,
and like the shit that you're conditioned with.
I'm talking even the passively racist ones that are, that the ones that the thing that rallies those people is the number of how many illegal immigrants there are in the country. Millions of people that they're talking about across the country that are here that are undocumented. But when you get to actual numbers and the effectiveness of these ICE raids. Like, for example, in LA, the population of undocumented people is anywhere between 900,000 and 1 million. Okay, that's a number that is used to scare people. It doesn't scare anybody else, but it scares racists.
And in the US, it's something like, what, 4%?
Something like that. This is why LA was the focus of these ICE raids. But then on June 11th, when Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary, got out in front of people and talked about the ICE accomplishments, it turns out that they had arrested a total of 330 people. They've caused 2 weeks or a week and a half of riots in LA over the arrest of 330 people. And only 113 of those people had criminal convictions. When you look at a population of nearly 1 million people who are undocumented, and this is supposed to be the big problem that they're addressing with these ICE raids, and then you look at the result of all of this effort and all of the fallout that's come from that effort, and you hold up the figure of 330 ICE arrests, you know for a fact that the point is not to reduce the population of undocumented people. It's something else.
Well, in addition to that, you have them camping outside of these legal proceedings in order to snatch them up.
See, they've always done that. They've always done that. That's not a new thing. They did it under Biden. They did it under Obama. That's not even a new thing. It's just more high profile now because they're doing it more. But they've started weeks of riots and created all of this unrest by doing these high profile, like snatching grabs, and have nothing to show for it. Absolutely nothing. There are they federalized the California National Guard. They brought in Marines, and to do what?
Every presidency before has deported more people.
But I mean, to do what? What is the end result of this effort? And it's obviously not to reduce the population of undocumented people. It's something else. I mean, people say it's like, it's just to terrorize people. And it's like, okay, but for why?
Yeah. And I think the answer is obvious. It's terrorism to motivate a base, and it's terrorism to justify more power.
And that's it. And that's why
and because the actors involved are themselves fucking racists.
And that's really a line that I'm drawing there that really seems likely is in relation to what we've been talking about in the Cold as Ice series. The result here is not necessarily to reduce the population of undocumented people. What they're trying to do is basically just get more of that support from this racist base to show them that something's happening. And also punish Democrat mayors and governors too. That's another part of this.
Oh, of course. The thing to look at here is when we're talking about, for example, the unhoused population, and you asked, how do we have a lower unhoused population? The answer is give them housing. Housing. So how do you have a lower undocumented population?
Document them.
Give them documents. Jesus, it's so fucking easy and cheaper. I mean, if you're, I mean, not that humanity ought to have the constraint of borders, but if we're just strictly one of these people who's complaining and whining about cost without actually knowing any of the numbers involved in what we're talking about, because they never do.
It's Stephen Miller going back to visit his hometown, which was Santa Monica, and looking around and saying, there's too many fucking taco trucks here. All right. I want to keep us moving. So something else that obviously is worth talking about because it's enormous is the U.S. getting inch by inch dragged into another Middle East conflict because Israel decided to bomb a bunch of apartment buildings and military installations in Iran and assassinate generals and nuclear scientists because they're convinced that Iran is days away from having a nuclear weapon, which, by the way, is exactly the same language that's been used since the 90s.
Yeah.
That Iran is 5 years, Iran is 2 years, Iran is 1 year away from having a nuclear weapon. It's been used to justify a U.S. military intervention and really adventurism in the Middle East for 3 decades now.
Well, what they actually do, you may not know this, but in Tel Aviv, they have this room that whoever the prime minister at the time is, they go into, and it's like a sanctuary type situation. It's got very low lighting. It's very romantic, really. And you go in, and in the center of it, it's all very wet. It's sort of like the grotto at the Playboy Mansion. on a pillar that is illuminated as the sole light in the room is a single tumbler that you would find in a bingo hall, and they just pick one of the balls to pick what the number of days or weeks or months it is until Iran has a nuclear weapon.
Are you talking about Israeli precogs? They do have a precog. It's Uri Geller.
On the morning of Friday the 13th, ooh, spooky, Israel defended itself against a surprise attack by Iran that would happen in the future. And the Israeli Ministry of Soothsaying predicted that an attack on Israel would happen the very next day. And they were right. Because Iran retaliated. Netanyahu described this barrage of Israeli missile strikes as on Iran in the Operation Rising Lion as preemptive attack. And we've heard that language before. Listeners at home may remember that classic line from George W. Bush. The W stands for war criminal. Preemptive or preventative warfare are acts of military aggression. They're not defensive. Even though the UN Charter is sufficiently fuzzy on that the Pennsylvania cowboy never really faced consequences for the unprovoked invasion of Iraq.
Why is he a Pennsylvania cowboy?
Because he's from Pennsylvania. The branding is Texas.
I thought he was from Massachusetts.
No, he's from Pennsylvania.
Oh, all right.
Anyway, Netanyahu's been making the same fucking claim for 3 decades. It's either years or months or weeks or completing a nuclear warhead to toss at Tel Aviv. Bibi claimed it was 3 to 5 years away in 1992 when he was in Israel's legislature. In 95, he repeated the same 3 to 5 years line, which notably was 3 to 5 years later.
We're both wrong. He was born in Connecticut.
God damn it.
Which would have sounded better. You would have had the alliteration, the Connecticut cowboy. Yeah.
Son of a bitch.
Boy, you really blew that one.
Moving on. Benjamin made a presentation to the UN This one was a sight for sore eyes.
Oh, that 2012 one? That 2012 one?
He's got this fucking Looney Tunes bomb graphic where he's claiming the next time that they're going to have a bomb by the next spring or summer. And he's got this circular bomb, the kind of thing that you see in Mario Brothers. And he draws with a red marker the red line that the UN needs to take before they develop enough fissile material enriched sufficiently to make a bomb. Even though you have to enrich uranium to a certain degree to have civilian power from nuclear.
Yeah, I mean I think that,
which is part of the nuclear non-proliferation
which
treaty.
By the way, Iran is a signing member of that treaty, and Israel is not.
They are not.
Yeah.
He addressed the U.S. Congress in 2015, claiming that Iran was weeks away, which he was specifically pushing back against Obama's deal with Iran to make sure that Iran doesn't acquire nukes. This is the same deal, by the way, that Trump totally upended and unraveled that was actually working quite well, according to literally everybody. And then now he's saying it could be a year or months away as he's lobbing missiles into residential compounds that's killing everybody there to get one general. And then the claim that he's making is made with the assumption that Iran must be coerced by Israel and gang to give up nuke development.
Have you seen all these people whining, these Israelis, about how about the buildings coming down in Tel Aviv and Haifa from the Iranian missiles? And they're just
the best part is that they're saying that it's
like attacking civilian targets, and
that's
like,
what I was gonna say.
My God, it's like you people. Like, what needs to, like, what is required to create such a large population of people who are so completely unable to see themselves?
You're attacking civilian areas. You can't be serious, right? This is satire. Somebody tell me this is satire. But of course not. I mean, I was just reading a Times of Israel article this morning that was complaining about the same thing. In residential areas, they bombed Tel Aviv and other cities. It's like, dude, all of Gaza is leveled. You specifically target hospitals and schools. What the fuck are you talking about?
Like, that's just what you do.
That's their whole fucking shtick. And crucially, all of this really implies that Iran is an unpredictable state that's willing to make unprovoked attacks in defiance of international law. And there's such an erratic theocracy that poses a danger to its neighbors in the world because it's so unhinged and unpredictable. By the way, Israel has invaded or attacked Syria, Lebanon, and Iran just in the last year. You know who hasn't attacked any of their neighbors except for in retaliatory attacks against Israel? Fucking Iran. Now, it's kind of assumed that
you don't need to be like in the bag with Iran and like love everything that they do to see that this is complete bullshit.
I'm opposed to fucking Ayatollah Khomeini and their theocracy.
Exactly.
But the hypocrisy here is absurd and over the top. That's the point here, is the hypocrisy is over the top. And meanwhile, Iran, while they absolutely do fund and arm militias in the region. You know who else fucking does that? The United States.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All over the fucking region. I think really the gripe from Israel is partly fueled by the fact that they don't have any militias to fund.
Yeah.
That they're doing all the dirty work themselves. And the reality is what they're completely missing, or what is totally lost in this conversation, is the assumption, just the blanket assumption really across the West that, oh, of course, Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. Now, I would prefer that they do not. But based on what? what exactly gives a country a right to have nuclear weapons and another country not a right to have nuclear weapons? Is it that they're unhinged and they attack their neighbors? Fucking Israel.
Well,
is it that they're,
is Israel, like the U.S. tried to stop this. They stole the plans for those nuclear weapons. Nobody gave it to them, and they stole it from the U.S. So it's like, this is something that John F. Kennedy was strongly against, was Israel having a nuclear weapon. And they decided to take it upon themselves, and they successfully got the plans and were able to develop it on their own. But nobody gave it to them.
Yeah. The only people with nukes who are not part of the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, are Pakistan and India. And presumably they're just going to bomb each other. The other one is Israel, who doesn't fucking sign on to that. They have probably somewhere, it's estimated, because they've been suspected of having them since like the 60s or 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it's between 40 and 100 nuclear warheads or something like that.
Like 90 and 400 nuclear warheads. I mean, that the sources vary, because they've had an official policy of neither confirming nor denying for decades and decades. They'll never admit it, but everybody fucking knows they have nukes. And they even like make passing references to nukes and then say, oh, that doesn't mean anything. Don't worry about that. But this is all part of the Begin doctrine. I don't know if this is pronounced right. Begin, who knows? But Israel has had this policy since at least 1962, when they did Operation Damocles, where Mossad abducted and mail-bombed former Nazi German rocket scientists who were developing missiles for Egypt. And I guess everybody had their own little Operation Paperclip going on at that time, because we had it, the Russians had it. I think UK had their own little paperclip. Either way, Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin? Who cares?
It's a Menachem Begin.
Menachem Begin, after whom the doctrine gets its name, articulated it in June 1981 after Israel did an airstrike that destroyed an unfinished nuclear reactor in Iraq under Operation Opera. Military aggression against a state that is outmatched by conventional warfare exacerbates the motivation to develop WMDs. The whole reason that Cuba wanted to have
fucking
nukes Cuba. It's called Cuba. Anyway, wanted to have nukes on their fucking island was to deter the United States, which vastly outmatched them in conventional warfare. And if they had nukes on the island, then they could do that. Unfortunately, they were pawns in what was really just what was always going to happen between the USSR and the US, where the USSR really just wanted the US to get their nukes away from their border territories.
The Sopranos episode where Christopher is talking to Paulie and he's like, that really happened? I thought it was a movie.
But really, they just use them as a playing card. And then they pulled out the nukes, of course. But the whole reason that they were so excited to have nukes there was that they were outmatched. Smaller countries that are not under the NATO treaty or otherwise under the U.S. sphere of influence are motivated to develop nuclear weapons as a deterrent if they're not part of one of the superpowers' spheres of influence and dominion, effectively. Because otherwise, they're just going to get fucking overrun by conventional warfare. And after the Israeli strikes, obviously, Iranian parliamentarians are preparing a bill for Iran to exit the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And by the way, they ratified it in fucking 1970, Iran, that is. And Israel has had nuclear weapons for so fucking long. They attacked Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. I don't need to say this, but I'm going to fucking say it again.
Right, but they didn't attack them with nukes, though.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, of course. I don't need to say this, but I'm going to say it again because I'll say it 1,000 times. They're an apartheid state, and in their current genocidal effort, they've killed well over 50,000 people. And then Iran, on the other hand, while funding a few militias, like the US does, has not directly attacked any of its neighbors. What gives any fucking nation a right to nukes or no right to nukes? And then, of course, we have Netanyahu bitching about how the retaliation is hitting residential centers.
Yeah, it's one of the most frustrating, insane things that you can watch on television right now. It's one of the most insane things happening. Not that you can watch, but that's going on in the world. That to see this, this really I'm not sure what the word for it is. This pleading that you get from the Israeli government about how evil Iran is for doing these things, for blowing up these buildings, and and at the same time they're still bulldozing Gaza.
By the way, the casualties are between the strikes between Israel and Iran, 200 and something in the case of the casualties in Iran, and it's like in the dozens in the case of Israel.
Well, there's a question there too, because Israel is not exactly transparent when it comes to reporting. So they haven't reported on accurately. I mean, there's already been some evidence that they've deliberately misled journalists with the numbers that they've released when it comes to the number of missiles that they've successfully intercepted. They tend to over indicate how many they've intercepted compared to how many actually hit targets on the ground. And they also have been lying about the number of buildings that have been destroyed. And one of the biggest pieces of evidence to reveal that deception on Israel's part is that they said, they've talked about how superficial the damage has been, but meanwhile, there's been footage of Netanyahu and other members of the defense ministry over there walking around touring sites that have been hit, and the rubble looks pretty extensive. So they're putting the damage on camera, but then they're saying that it wasn't really that bad. And it looks pretty bad.
It does look pretty bad.
Did
you see that viral video from Friday or Saturday where in Lebanon it's nighttime and there's a club and some guy's playing the saxophone, and in the backdrop there's all these Iranian missiles raining down on Israel.
Yeah, you see them. They're
maybe a few hundred miles away.
Yeah, they're launching. Yeah, from Iran. That's what you see. The missiles going up. Yeah. It's
no. This is in Lebanon, so they're coming down into Israel.
It was in Lebanon. Okay.
Yeah, it's in Lebanon, and everybody's dancing, and the guy's playing the saxophone.
While we're
a drastic juxtaposition.
While we're bashing Israel right now, I saw a clip of people might not know that there are a lot of Thai visitor workers in Israel, and because Israel brings in people from all over the place for construction and all kinds of other jobs. And as people were going into the bomb shelter, I think this was in Tel Aviv, but it may have been in Haifa. Those are the two major places that Iran has been targeting. They were refusing entry to the Thai people because they're not Israeli. So they were literally as the alarms were going off and people were taking shelter in these underground bunkers, people were blocking the Thai people from entering the bunker.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That is perfectly consistent with what I expect.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Give me a segue, Jules.
Well, speaking of shooting stars.
Holy shit. All right. Goddamn. Two state lawmakers in Minnesota, both Democrats, were shot along with their spouses. Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were both killed, and Senator John Hoffman and his wife were seriously injured, but are now in stable condition. The suspected shooter was arrested Sunday night in the city of Green Isle, Minnesota, which is where he lived. They found him in the woods hiding out. And I think people are going to have a real tough time unraveling this guy's story, because right in this day and age, and in recent time, they the main question everybody asks is who does he vote for? What political party is he part of? What was his agenda? All right, so this guy, that's still a suspect because he's not convicted, showed up disguised as a police officer and wearing what news reports have called a hyper-realistic latex mask. I'm gonna push back on that a little bit, because the mask that he's wearing makes him look like Michael Myers, and it's
so loosely fitting, and like you could see that the eyes are a good centimeter behind the mask's eyes. What boggles my mind is, why bother imitating a police officer when you're going to wear this fucking Friday the 13th shit?
And seriously, if you're planning, obviously he was just wearing the uniform so that he could get entry into the home so that they'd let him in. But then you wear this insane Halloween mask, and I really don't understand why anybody opened the door.
Wasn't that also literally on Friday the 13th?
It was. Yes. And so he's been ID'd as 57-year-old Vance Luther Bolter. And, the short answer about his politics is who knows? Because there's so many things that it kind of does lean this way, but at the same time, there's a lot of questions, I think, and about this guy's background and what was motivating him here. When they found his car, which he left behind because at one point police showed up when he was trying to get entry, that was into Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman's home, and he was trying to get entry and they weren't letting him in. And then the cops showed up, and at the time that they showed up, he forced his way inside and shot both of them rather quickly, and then took off. So he left his vehicle behind, which was a security vehicle that, if you've ever seen the way security vehicles look now, especially the expensive ones, it looks like a police vehicle. It's got the same police style lights on top. It's got a spotlight on the side. It's usually all black or mostly black with dark windows. It looks like a police vehicle.
All those rent-a-cop services deliberately make their outfits and uniforms and cars look like cops, so that people, if they're not thinking too hard about it, will be a lot more submissive. If they're not,
yeah, you have the immediate association with law enforcement, so you get some of that carryover, civilian impact, civilian behavior towards law enforcement.
Yeah.
So in his vehicle, they found a hit list with 70 something lawmakers and other people, 40 lawmakers, and then a bunch of other people on this list who, anywhere from reproductive rights activists to doctors who perform abortions. The list was long, and he clearly did not make his way very far into it. Along with a few No King's Day parade flyers. So it raises the question of whether or not he planned some sort of violent attack on the No King's Day parade in Minnesota.
Almost every time one of these political attacks happens, and then they catch the guy or the guy dies, and then they're rooting through his stuff, and then they find things. I'm blown away by how often there's almost a comical, badly written, contrived, as if it's CSI Miami documentation left behind. They've got their fucking shopping list handwritten on the dashboard of the car, ready for the police to find. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying it blows me away how often it's the case that, well, here's the things that I plan to do. Like it's a fucking villain in a Bond film who explains his whole plan ahead of time.
Well, he also, in this notebook, he had detailed surveillance notes. So he'd obviously, because one of the charges are more than, he's bringing up on multiple charges, obviously for the murders and the attempted murders, but he's also being brought up on multiple counts of stalking. because of the notes that he left behind in this book, in his notebook, where he'd been following a number of these people and making notes of their activities and addresses where they work, home addresses, and he'd clearly been surveilling them for quite a while. So a lot, like all this together, and then the other evidence that's been collected about this guy is that he was strongly against reproductive rights for religious reasons mostly, and alongside that, though, he also served in a non-political capacity on a business development board that he was appointed to by Minnesota governor and Democrat vice president candidate Tim Walz. I mean, so it's a mess. This guy he owned a security company called Praetorian Guard. And, but he was also flying. And so he had this business sort of like, this small business relationship with Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota. But he was also flying back and forth to the Democratic Republic of the Congo for these revival, like Christian revival gatherings. So
these are the same fucking places that those Christ crypto people were visiting that we were talking about.
Yes, exactly. The one that came up with the Jesus coin and then rug pulled everybody. Yeah. So Joey Manorino, because I love this guy, he's got a take on this one too. MAGA world has been having a hard time wrapping their head around around Bolter's politics, the Minnesota shooters. Manorino said, "I'm sorry, but a person who works for Tim Walz is not a Republican. Walz is the most progressive governor in the nation. Do not fall for the media spin. Just because somebody is registered as a Republican does not mean they're a conservative Republican." And then he just like pulls his own cards out right here. And he says, "I literally was registered Democrat from 2019 until 2024, even though I was completely MAGA that entire time. I did it just to influence the 2020 Democrat presidential primary. So don't be fooled by the media saying the shooter in Minnesota was MAGA."
Then his roommate, who was crying on national
hold
TV.
on. I'm going to go.
I'm sorry. Am I jumping ahead here?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going through the MAGA takes first.
Okay. All right.
Mike Lee, Republican senator from Utah, is absolutely convinced that the anti-reproductive freedom murderer who was a registered Republican and whose friend has been telling everybody how much he loves Trump, which is what Jules was about to say, and who was an evangelical preacher, ran a security company, and had a kill list of abortion providers and pro-choice activists, is actually a Marxist. I think Mike Lee is redefining crypto Marxism. And so he tweeted.
That's actually the seventh stage of capitalism.
He tweeted this and he pinned the tweet. "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way." And it's a close up of the porch security camera, which shows in detail this like ridiculous leather latex mask that Boltman was wearing. And so when Marxists don't get their way, clearly they wear a Halloween mask and then go shoot people who perform abortions and are Democrat lawmakers. That's what Marxists do. This is from the New York Post. "A masked in uniform Vance Luther Bolter, who was a political appointee of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, shot Senator John Hoffman and his wife in their Champlin home early Saturday, leaving them seriously injured." So that is Senator John Hoffman and his wife. He then moved on to former Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman's house, where he is believed to have slaughtered her and her husband, the sources told the Post. They say former there because she's now deceased. She was active as the House Speaker at the time. Jarring images shared by the Federal Bureau of Investigation include a photo that allegedly showed Bolter wearing a creepy Halloween-style latex mask in the style of a bald, wrinkly man during the targeted shootings. And at the time that this was written, he was still on the loose. He exchanged a manifesto listing the names of 70 politicians, including Walz and his Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and a stack of papers stating "No Kings" in reference to the nationwide anti-Trump protests, according to police. The apparent hit list included abortion providers, clinics, and Planned Parenthood. sources told the Post. Both of the Democrats he targeted were pro-choice. Police are weighing whether Bolter held extreme anti-abortion views, the sources said. They're weighing it.
Could be anything, really. Put it on the scale with the feather.
Yeah. Hortman was staunchly pro-choice and led the Minnesota House in passing the PRO Act in 2023, which codified the legality of abortion and other forms of reproductive health care. She also boosted funding for abortion clinics and passed protections for providers. CNN added some more details about the appointment to this board. Bolter served on a state board with Hoffman, records show. So he actually knew her personally. In 2019, Walz put Bolter on the governor's Workforce Development Board, a group of business owners who recommend policies to the state government. In a letter, Walz said the post was in recognition of Bolter's integrity, judgment, and ability. They also, according to a spokesman for the governor, the development board, which has more than 60 members, is one of many external boards and commissions whose members are unpaid and come from all parties. The spokesperson said the governor does not interview applicants to the boards. So what you're looking at here is a bunch of people review these appointments and then submit their recommendations to the governor, and the governor signs them or doesn't. The governor doesn't sit across from a desk and get to know everybody. So it's very...
Also, have you ever met a group of businessmen or business advisors who are not fucking right wing?
Well, yeah.
Ever?
And that's the thing, is that these are people who have standing in the community. So they're necessarily going to be coming from all parties. If they weren't
it's
doing
like having
that,
a chamber of Congress.
Chamber of Commerce.
What did I say? Oh, I'm sorry. Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Chamber of Congress. All right. It's like having a Chamber of Commerce, and you happen to have a Democrat in charge at the time.
Absolutely.
It's like, yeah, that has nothing to do with who's actually there.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a bunch of fucking right wingers.
Well, yes, it will largely, because and even if it's not right wingers, even if you have a good mix of parties involved, then you're going to still have people with a shared interest of promoting business development. You know, like that's just what they're there for. It doesn't really matter what their political affiliation is, because they're promoting business development. So even though Bolter and Hoffman were together in that, like, shared that role on this development board, it's unclear, because there's so many members. They don't know if they actually interacted a lot personally. I think the cops are still investigating this. Bolter has worked as director of security patrols for Praetorian Guard Security Services, which provide, quote, random armed patrols of customers' properties, according to the company's webpage, which also suggests he could have had access to uniforms and equipment that could aid in impersonating a police officer. I mean, that's pretty much a one-to-one match there. The firm was registered to Bolter's home address and listed a woman who was apparently his wife as president and CEO. She did not respond to messages from CNN. So this is where I'm gonna leave it there with that particular article. Or at least skip ahead. This is where it gets really fuzzy, though, is because he's married. He's got a home address, which is the listed business address for Praetorian Security, or what are they called? Protection Services, or whatever it is. So Praetorian Guard Security Services. But then later on, we find out that he also lived someplace else and had a housemate. And
yeah,
and that one, it seems like, well, maybe he lived there, maybe he just slept there sometimes. It's really unclear, because this guy lived in Minnesota, and this address that was listed for the security business is outside of Minnesota. Minneapolis. This business is listed as outside of Minneapolis, about an hour away. So he might have stayed with this other guy when he had business in Minneapolis, but I mean, it's an hour away. I mean, it's not that far of a drive. So I don't know. Yeah.
And also, this guy totally, he entirely looks like he lives in a hole coding all day and night. I mean, like he comes out and the sun burns his skin. So
the video from outside Hortman's home on Saturday showed law enforcement towing a black Ford Explorer equipped with police lights. Archive photos from a home previously owned by Bolter show a similar vehicle in the driveway. In speeches reviewed by CNN, Bolter described his deep faith and said he was born again into the church as a teenager. Quote, I met Jesus when I was 17 years old and I gave my life to him, Bolter told the church in the DRC in February 2023, and I just wanted to tell everybody about Jesus. Records also show that Bolter once launched a Christian nonprofit called Revo Formation Ministries. An archived website under that name includes a biography of him, describing Bolter as having traveled extensively to preach Christianity, including in the Middle East, where the site says he had sought out militant Islamists in order to share the gospel and tell them that violence wasn't the answer. The website described Bolter as a reverend and an author, noting that he had written a book that presents a, quote, different paradigm on the nature of man and our relationship with God. CNN reviewed numerous videos of Bolter preaching in the DRC from 2021 to 2023. Bolter appears emotional when describing his religious devotion. He also frequently talked about his connection to the DRC and what he perceives as the suffering the country has endured due to decades of internal conflict and the meddling of other countries.
And I'm just as excited about Jesus.
Et je suis juste excité
right
de
here,
Jésus.
right now.
Jusqu'à présent, même maintenant.
And when I get excited,
Et quand je suis excité,
I want to dance.
je veux danser.
And what Jesus did for me.
C'est que Jésus a fait pour moi.
Jesus is God.
Jésus est
Almighty
Dieu.
God.
C'est le Dieu
He
puissant.
saved my life.
Il a sauvé ma vie.
Yeah, so that was a Bolter jumping around and preaching at one of these trips to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He said, I've been to North and South America, I've been to the Middle East, I've been to Eastern Europe, and I've been in the DRC. I've never been in a country before like the DRC that has had so much taken away. I hear the history and it hits my heart. So many people, so many countries have taken, he said in 2022. Bolter registered to vote as a Republican in the early 2000s, state records show. In a post 6 years ago on LinkedIn, Bolter encouraged people to vote and wrote, I think the election is going to have more of an impact on the direction of our country than probably any election we have been a part of or will be a part of for years to come.
He's not wrong that time.
His appointment to that development board indicated no party preference. And it goes on. And so then Bolter's friend, this guy, David Carlson, gave an interview and talked about his relationship with Bolter and what his thoughts were on Bolter.
He was a loving, caring guy, loved his family, loved his friends, and loved God. And I don't know why he did what he did. It's not fans. No one will believe this. No one that grew up. He had lots of friends, trust me. I wish I could have been there to stop him.
So Carlson also talked about how much Bolter loved MAGA.
Yeah.
So it's pretty hard to deny that his political affiliations at this point. And in another conversation, that same man, David Carlson, said that Bolter was experiencing a lot of financial troubles, and he said it was probably because he quit his job and kept going to preach in Africa.
Okay, but seriously, to my point that I said earlier, this guy looks like a spitting image of 1990s Steve Wozniak. I'm not kidding.
I thought Wozniak had a beard.
Well, he does now, but like...
Oh, he didn't back then.
No, like, this guy looks exactly like him. Anyway.
Different paths.
From the past.
Yeah, I think on that note, let's call it for today. But before we go, on our way out, we have another word from our beautiful boy, Joey Manarino. This is from a tweet of his on June 7th. To the left-wing scum who are ordering pizzas to people's homes using my phone number, you have the wrong address and I am not even in the country right now. Literally out of the country visiting family. So you're sending pizzas to an address I lived at 6 years ago to people I don't even know. All you have is the right phone number. Stop harassing innocent people and stick to sodomizing yourselves with effigies of Michelle Obama. I love this guy so much. Thanks everyone for listening. Next week we are back with a guest, and Patreon subscribers can look out for the next installment of Cold as Ice in a couple of weeks. So mash that subscribe button so you don't miss it.
Mash, mash, mash. Thanks, everybody.
Until then, we will see you out there.
Later, skaters.
Chaos and maybe even a weakness.
Underwhelming.
Yeah, it's weird because we do have the most powerful military in the history of the world. And yet you see these like the Jumbotron was broken. At one point, there was a guy carrying a drone.